Hello and welcome to the next episode of my advanced blueprint tutorials. In this episode we'll cover a lot of updates to the current system and a rework of some of its component, and we'll welcome a few new family members of the AGR family. So for starters, we're doing an AMAP delta, and we've made some changes to the AGR Anim graph as overall. I've prepared great changes to the FPS IK setup and examples, and we are using virtual bones for this example and a new solver. The new solver is IK FK based, and it's using virtual bones for the left hand correction right now. In 4.26 I will be improving on that, and I'll be using the full body solver that is being shipped as experimental with the next engine version. We also are merging modification tags from multiple components into one, and done some general changes to the Anim graph. I've added an AGR controller, which is a universal controller that is using our new AGR interface calls, and we have an AGR interface that is for controller, character, and all basic systems. We also have AGR Function Library, which now has only one function, but extremely useful. And to the combat component, I've added aim assist and targeting system that I will be presenting in this video. So let's jump in. Okay, so this is the first person template map with our BP, FPP example character. However, we made some changes to the character itself and to the Anim graph. So let's go through all the assets up to down. So starting with the mannequin itself, we've added two virtual bones. One that goes from upper left hand to lower arm, upper arm to lower arm, directly without any transform, so it doesn't have any extra transform, it just goes here, and it is a bone target for IK setups. The second one is virtual bone left hand. So how you do that, you just click on your right hand, you do add virtual bone, and you pick hand L, and that will automatically create a virtual bone that goes from one bone to another. Why we really like those bones is that because whenever you have any animation, it contains the virtual bone in relation to the bone that you are using. So for example, if we are blending only the right hand onto other animation, it will blend this entire chain of bones, but it will also blend any virtual bone on top of it. So we will blend this virtual bone, which will also be used for auto-correcting the left hand position in relation to the right hand. One of the best things is that it's actually taking its parent's rotation, so whenever we are doing IK setup on the right hand, it is automatically transferred to the left hand as well. Okay, and let's go into core Anim graph. In the core Anim graph, we made some very small changes. For example, in the component, now we are actually calling the combat component, and we are appending gameplay tag containers from both systems. So first we are taking the gameplay tags from the animation master, which is, well, usually valid, and then if we have a combat master component, we are taking its tag container, and we are merging both of those tags, because usually when you are searching for a tag, you don't care if it's on the combat component or animation component. Your character either has a tag or doesn't. When it comes down to the Anim graph, we made some changes here as well. One of the biggest change is that now in the IK setup we have a linked Anim graph, which is called AGR IK Solver Anim BP. And in the next engine version, 4.26, I will be using the full body solver that Epic Games is providing to make a more complex full body awareness IK solver. For now, this is just an anim graph that is storing our hand and legs IK, and that's it. Also in the overlay, I've modified the FP starter, so now it has few additional nodes that it didn't have before. So we are just reading values that we already had here. It's nothing new. So we only added one new, which is the IK scale, and by default it's just 1. Aim up delta is a new thing. So when we go here, and we go here into aim offset, we have this entire piece here in the middle, and it is being used by the hands IK, and I will show how in a second. So let's go into first person anim graph. So it did change a bit, like this is the old anim graph, it didn't change at all. I've added this one node, which is taking the hand R, and it's doing a transform modify bone, and we are only modifying rotation. We are ignoring translation and scale and just adding to existing rotation. And we're taking the IK scale, which is by default, like I said, 1. And we're taking the aim up delta, strafe velocity, and lean. And how it works is that when we are in first person, now that when we are strafe walking, we're taking the strafe walking velocity, and we'll be leaning gun onto the side slightly. And it's, you know, the faster we're moving, the more it is tilted. So it's quite subtle. And actually, if we go into third person camera, okay, we don't see what happens to the left hand, but the left hand is rotating accordingly to the right hand, just as it should. And if we are targeting up and down, we are also doing IK on the gun, left and right. So, and it can all combine, so we can move, we can lean, we can, you know, do all that stuff, and the gun will react accordingly. We used to not see the left hand on the gun, so this is IK correction, and you can see that it's really sticking to the weapon, no matter how much IK we are running on it. We don't see any left hand glitches, and this is being set up okay, let me try something. Okay, eject. So this, because the first person perspective animation has the left hand completely dislocated, we are using FK on the left hand to match accordingly the virtual bone that comes from right hand to the left hand, and then we are doing some small transform on it, which is reflected here. So we are modifying the virtual bone itself for us to match whatever location we want. So for example, we could move it just slightly here, and you can see that it just adjusted, and now we can see the thumb a bit better, and it's reacting a bit better. Okay, to the IK. So yeah, this is how you do it. Here we are just we have to fake basically IK setup, because the hands, they don't have IK bones set up properly, so we are just copying bones from the FK bones and doing this small correction on the left hand for it to look as we want, because if you just look at the animation, the position of the left hand and right hand are a bit off. So we're taking the virtual bone from here when we are blending per bone. So we are blending clavicle right, which goes to upper hand, lower hand, hand, fingers, and virtual bones. So we're taking the virtual bones position directly from the animation source, so the first person animations. And when blending on top of the input pose, we are still keeping this translation, and we can still use it for correction. Let's go here and let's take a look into our IK solver. The IK solver is very simple. It just has animation tag container and checking if we have a animation modify tags ignore left hand correction. If it has, then we are not doing this fabric node. and this fabric node is a FK correction for the left hand based on the virtual bone space transform. And the really cool thing is that we can also copy the target rotation, because it's keeping the relation between the rotation of the right hand. So whatever IK we do on the right hand, it will reflect on the left hand as well. Then we're doing hand IK correction, which is repositioning the AK handgun bone, and it is adjusting FK bones and IK bones accordingly. You don't see this node do anything at mannequin. If we just skip it, you won't see any difference. But if those animations, if this anim graph was retargeted, that would make a world of a difference. So that is it for now. What else do we have here? And okay. Oh yeah, the aim assist. Aim assist is a really cool new feature, and this cool new feature comes from the AGR Combat Master, and now we have a new variable types an entire anim graph, which is targeting, and we can do auto aim. We can set up targets and clean targets, and it is AI compatible. And whatever magic is happening when it comes down to auto targeting, it is actually happening in the new class, which is the AGR Player Controller. So let's go into AGR Player Controller, and in the AGR Player Controller we got two events that comes from AGR interface. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 functions for the controller, one general function, and one function for the character. So any character, like if you implement an interface, you obviously implement all the functions that there are. So I named them in groups, so you know which ones you have to implement and which you can absolutely skip. So for here, we just are checking if we have FP camera on, and if it is on, then we are taking FP camera. If not, then we're taking TP camera, and we're just returning this from this function whenever any other blueprint requires it from us. Coming back to Combat Master, no, actually coming back to Player Controller. What we have here. Okay, so at begin play we're taking AGR references, and AGR reference is just a sequence that is taking all our AGR components, checking if they are valid, and saving them in reference values. This event is then again called when you possess any character. So when you possess a character, you check if this character has certain components. When you unpossess a character, you invalidate all those components, because setting an empty reference simply invalidates it. So whenever you try to do a valid check on something like that, it will also always say it's not valid. Okay, then we have an event which is called event set rotation, and it is basically taking our combat component, calling a new function which is called get auto aim targets, which returns if the aim assist is active and if a target is valid. So if it is valid, then oh, we actually should, yeah, we should actually do a valid check here. That should help. It did work anyway, but it's more clean this way. Okay, so if we have a valid target and we have active auto aim, then we are setting the rotation for this target's id viewpoint. So for characters, it will be not the center of the character, it will be the actual viewpoint. This is quite important, because however you set up the auto aim, however you set up the AI character, if you set up the base eye height properly, this auto aim assist will help you to, either target the torso of the character or, for example, the head. It's up to you where you set up this this value. And then we are just slowly doing an rotation interpretation from our control rotation to this fine look at rotation. And this is not important anymore, and we're saving. Now when we are using this event, we're using it obviously at tick, but not completely always. So we have to have a valid combat component. If it is valid, then we need to have a valid target, and if we have a valid target, then we are checking if our controlled pawn is valid, and then we are getting from the pawn the active camera. And depending if we use camera or scene camera, or if we even get anything, because we might get none of the cameras, or this might just fail triggering, we will or we won't use the event set rotation. Now, however, if we are not using the auto aim, then we're checking if we are using look at cursor. So this is copied from the third person example, basically into this one universal controller, and you control this controller through interface calls. So you can always do AGR set, and you have AGR controller events that are just interface calls or messages, so you can always call them. Yeah, so we have one controller that functions for every target. So how the aim assist looks like, let me show you. So it is set up inside the character itself, that on tick we are doing a line trace. And by the way, this line trace is, let me show you, on tick we're getting the active camera. So we can call a function that is an interface function like this get active camera. We can actually call a function on ourselves, and we can use it as an interface call on target self. So that's exactly what we are doing. And then we are doing an AGR forward trace. An AGR forward trace is the first function of our AGR function library, and it's basically allowing me to skip all this that I usually have to do when I'm doing traces, and just have a single unified event that I can call in absolutely any blueprint, and don't have this terrible spaghetti monster. So we're doing a line trace that is 100,000 units in front, so that's like a kilometer. We're doing a draw for 1 second in these colors, and we are ignoring all attached actors. If we have any actors, we don't want them to collide with this trace, and we are obviously ignoring self and any function from a library that's being called inside a blueprint. The self goes for this blueprint. So wherever it is called, whatever is the word context is the self. So we're by default ignoring our character. So we're doing a trace by channel, visibility, all that stuff. And if we hit something, then we are checking if it has tag can be target. Now this tag is a manually set tag. So whenever you have actors, you can go here, type tag, and you can add any number of tags that are not gameplay tags, which is very important. It's not gameplay tags, it just tags. Okay. And you can type in anything you want, because it's just being used for some filters. So you can, for example, get all actors with tag. And it's, once again, it is not a gameplay tag, it is a tag. So simply a name, value that every actor has. And this is automatically doing a filter. But we don't need to get all targets, we just need to get our look at target, and if it has tag, then it is being set up as our aim target, and if it doesn't have this tag, then it is clearing the aim target. Now how our auto aim behaves, we have defined here by just those two values, and I didn't call any events on the combat master, I just added this component, didn't change anything because I'm not using melee setup at all, I'm just using this targeting. And I just set auto aim true and auto aim speed 10, which is blend speed. So the higher this value is, the faster the auto aim, the more aggressive the auto aim will be. So let's see how it works. Okay, so I am in third person perspective, and all those white boxes, they have the auto aim on. So once I hit with my cursor any of them, it will be dragged to the middle of it, because this is the outside of this actor, but it will be dragged a bit slowly, so I can actually run away from it without even touching my mouse. I can just move fast enough that I lose the target, but as long as I am targeting, if I move, it will be lerping a bit. So that's very useful. You can use it in different ways. You can use it to just control the camera itself, or you can use it to actually do a small aim assist, because I can move my cursor still, but it's being dragged. It's being dragged very slowly and very subtle. And this is a very big target, remember. Like if the target was a lot smaller, like a character far away, this aim assist would be something that you might see on games like Destiny or Call of Duty on mobile consoles. Yeah. And let's go into first person. In first person, it is working the same. However, there is a small, you see, a jitter when you are fighting when it's near zero. When it comes to a stop, it's just shaking the camera terribly. So it needs some work at first person, definitely. But it generally works. So I can actually do an aim assist. I'm not touching the mouse right now, and now I am. And it doesn't take much effort to actually lose the target and start aiming at something else. I can shoot this guy, I can start shooting this guy, I can start shooting this guy, and switching those targets for me is very small effort, and it really helps with targeting a lot. And that also works with AI. So AI can have a focus target in the same way, and they will try to focus you on in similar fashion. And it is taking any values that you have. So for example, I am having a look at right now. So this character will try to look at this target no matter what. But now I am aim at, and I will try to aim at this target as much as I can. Yeah, so I think this is pretty useful. So for example, this top-down template is now using AGR player controller, and when you play, you can see it's working exactly the same as it did. And you no longer have to, use different controllers per every example, because all examples will be unified. And they will be a lot easier to copy context from one example to another, and it will not require any extra work. So yeah, there's that. Hopefully you will find it useful, and I can tell you I'm working on some new updates. Right now I am working on smooth aim assist at first person, so I will greatly improve on that. I will test everything over the network on listen server and dedicated server. I am also working on procedural leaning as part of the full body solver. Like I said, improvements of the aim assist, and I'm doing some requests, like for example using aim assist for look at camera or look at specific objects and targets, while still allowing player to move freely the camera itself. Thanks for listening, and see you guys soon.